One second. One second. Might be back. Okay, sorry about that, guys. My cat thinks that the cables coming out of the outlet on the wall are toys, and pulled the plug right out of the wall. my cat Pie was playing with the cables and decided to pull the whole plug out of the wall. So, oh boy. So much for that. Sorry about that, guys. One second. Let me see if the YouTube stream is back up. We'll see real quick. Hey, Dr. Joe. Sorry about that.
Hey, I am so tempted to make a joke about a crude word around cats right now, but
it shows that I'm live on YouTube, but I don't know where the live stream is. Let me see if I can find it here. There we go. It shows we're online here. There we go. I found it. Let me make sure it's actually connected. I'm gonna get the chat window back open again. Sorry about that, guys. Had a little bit of a mishap there. My cat Pie decided to unplug my entire electrical cable from the wall because he thought it was a toy and it's not. So, but we are back. Give me just a second. All right, we're back, and I did just plug in the Ethernet cable, so we're not running on Wi-Fi. That should fix things up, guys. Let me know if it's still laggy on you, or if it picks up. Let me check my phone real quick to see if everything's good to go on my phone. 1 second. Those darn cats. I love my cat, but he gets into a little bit of trouble every once in a while. I think we should be good to go. It looks a little bit laggy on YouTube, but it might just be a delayed signal. So we'll see. Let's see if that clears up. We'll give it a shot to clear up. I'm going to open up the guest box again on YouTube. Okay, guest box is open again. And we got Dr. Joe with us still. Let me open the guest box on TikTok. There we go. TikTok's open. Bada bing, bada boom. And we're back at it, guys. Thanks for being patient. I don't know what happened to the guest that was with us. I suspect that guest had to drop, but we've got Dr. Joe with us still, and we've got Zeal with us. How you doing, Zeal?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you for asking. Zeal, give me just 1 second to set up my screen real quick. I had to reopen all my programs because my cat took my computer down for a second. Yeah, Woolite Mammoth is asking what happened. Give me a second to set up my chat box so you guys can see the chat windows. Sorry about that. There we go. I said, did the Ark of the Covenant capacitor give out? That's what it was. It was that I've got the Ark of the Covenant over here, and it finally gave up the ghost. And Rochelle, welcome to the Kraken Crew Elite. Big W, Rochelle. I think is that Rochelle I talked to earlier? And Aaron says, blaming cats, a story. So listen, that's really what happened. My cat did it. I actually thought at first that my power just flickered off because last night when I was asleep, the power in my neighborhood did go down, and it went down for the entire day. It didn't come up until like 4 or 5 o'clock today. The house just had barely enough time to heat back up before I started my live stream. So I was like, shit, the power went out again. But I looked over and it was just the It's just the cat playing with the wall, the outlet on the wall. Anyway, Zeal, are you at least 18 and are you a believer?
Yeah, I'm 27 and I am a believer.
Awesome. And which God do you believe in?
I believe in a Christian God. And the first thing I want to say to you is like, I'm not here to preach to you or to try to convert you or to just have an argument with you. I'm just here to kind of give you a different perspective, I guess.
A different perspective than what?
Well, I am, pretty hardcore Christian. However, I think that Christianity has a lot of problems. And I think that the biggest problem that Christianity has is that it has become a fable, literally. The stories are so misunderstood that it's literally become a fable. People just listen to what the preacher says, and the preacher heard it from his preacher, who has heard it from his preacher, and it's like it's all fake, like it's all cultural.
Yeah, I
Understand
agree.
what I'm
It's all
saying?
fake. Yeah. But you
Yeah,
didn't learn it from your preacher. You learned it by reading it yourself in your bedroom, or?
that's right.
Okay, so you got the real truth. You didn't learn it from a professional.
Well, here's how I think it works. They read the scriptures and then they try to make sense of it whichever way they think, and they've been spewing this stuff.
Well, some pastors do.
for
Some pastors
thousands
actually
of
go to
years.
school, right?
Yeah, but even though they go to school, it's still cultural. Like it's cultural teachings.
What do you think they study while they're at school?
What's that?
What do you think they study while they're in seminary?
All kinds of stuff.
Anything that would
Actually,
be helpful to interpreting the Bible?
sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, anything that would be helpful for interpreting the Bible, you think?
I actually went to seminary myself,
Mm-hmm.
and
Which one do you go to?
do you know the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yeah, you went to BYU or a different one?
No, I didn't go to BYU. Just in my area, they would do seminary,
What's the name of it?
and so just like seminary class. That's what it's called. It's not like an
What's the name
actual.
of the school?
No, it's actually a church that they
Oh,
give
so you
the
didn't go to
seminary.
seminary, you just went to church.
Well, it is seminary. Like it is a class that would be taught in an actual school, but it's just taught for all the regular kids. Like it's
Yeah.
taught to teenagers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
Um,
seminary to me. How many credit hours did it take to get your degree?
so like it's not for that.
Oh, so it's not a
It's
seminary then.
um
Sounds like a
it's
Bible
not
study.
credited. Well, it's not credited,
So you
but
definitely didn't go to
it's
seminary then. Sounds like Sunday school, my friend. I went to Sunday school for a long time too before I went to seminary.
well, it's a lot deeper than Sunday school. Like way
Mm,
deeper.
I'm sure it
Like
is.
way deeper.
Did you learn any extra biblical literature that would help you to interpret the Bible? Like, did you read any ancient Near Eastern texts?
No, not really.
Did you learn Greek or
Mm,
Hebrew?
Not quite. No.
Did you read any supporting books from the culture, like Philo or Josephus?
Not those specific ones, but
Well, I hate to break it to you, then you didn't go to
the other
seminary.
ones. Well, that's how we call it, I guess. So I wasn't thinking exactly about what you were meaning by that. But I personally have studied many other religions myself, and I actually went away from this church for many years. But here's the different view that I want to give you is that have you seen those videos? I know this is going to sound weird, but the way I look at Christianity is very different than most people. And most Christians would actually say that I'm blasphemous for saying this, but I don't really care. Uh, did you see those videos of the United States government showing like UFOs flying around and stuff?
No, I don't believe they did.
No? You
I
think that's just
I read the 64-page paper that was written by the government, by the committee that did the investigations. I'm not aware that they published any videos.
okay? Yeah, so there was 3 videos up to last year. Now there's
Do you believe
tons
in
of videos.
aliens?
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely believe in aliens. And
How many gods
here's
do you believe in?
I believe in one God,
Okay. And he created the
but I
aliens
believe
and the earthlings?
yeah, I believe that he is an alien actually.
Oh,
He is I believe that he is the most advanced alien of all,
did he
actually.
create all the aliens?
Uh I believe that he has created his own sphere of creation and that others have created their own spheres of
Right. So
creation.
this is like part of the Mormonism many gods situation.
Yeah. However,
Yeah.
when we think about aliens, we think about the green being that is, in a UFO and stuff, but they can be all kinds of ways. And we're talking about a kind of being that has a biological technology that is so advanced that
I'm
it makes
sure he
it looks like
is.
magic to
Where is he? Where's the god?
well, he actually lives somewhere in space,
Like on Kolob
somewhere
or
somewhere in the cosmos.
on a different planet?
So Kolob, yeah, I see that you know quite a bit, but Kolob is a star that is near to God's living place. It's
Can
not where he actually
can you live
lives.
on a star?
Yeah, we live in a planet.
Do you know what
Like
stars are made out of?
yeah, there's all kinds of planets and stars in the cosmos. I mean,
Do you know what stars
you
do?
can't possibly. Yeah, stars are um, they are
It's a giant ball of
becoming
plasma.
something. Yes, but they're becoming something.
Do you
They're
think that
becoming something.
anything can survive being inside of a ball of plasma?
No, but do you believe in evolution?
That's not even remotely related to what we're talking about. I'm suggesting
Of course
that
it is.
believing that somebody lives on Kolob and Kolob is a star and stars are in fact plasma is a crazy take.
Well, do you believe in evolution?
Are you going to answer my question?
What's your question?
Can anything live on a star?
I have no idea.
The answer is no.
Well, we don't know that.
I think we do. Yeah.
We can't know that.
No,
We
we
don't
absolutely
even
do know
know.
that. We know that anything in human form, anything that we've witnessed, even anything in our solar system, if it was on the sun, it would be annihilated.
Yeah, so like you said, everything that we've witnessed, and
Oh,
there's a
right.
lot that we
Okay, so
haven't witnessed.
yeah,
And
you
so,
believe in
if,
things that we've never seen before, but why would I believe in
well,
things we've never seen before?
well, because for example, matter is something that man has never seen before until fairly recent.
Matter,
And so
we're literally all of
just
us are
because
matter. This can't be real. Dr. Joe, is this guy for real? What's happening right now? Am I in
I'm
Crazyville?
talking I'm talking about cells.
Matter. You said matter. We are matter. Everything's made of matter. We've been touching matter the entire time we've been alive.
Okay, so specifically something like a cell. Okay. Uh,
We're made of cells, yeah.
yeah, but we couldn't see that before. We didn't know that cell was a science, part of truth,
hmm
and that our body has billions and billions of them,
hmm
and that they control everything in our body. We didn't know that. However, it was true. And so just because we can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not true. For example,
Yeah, but
we know
people
more
as
about
early as the ancient Greeks were positing that the human body was actually made up of smaller and smaller particles that you just couldn't see with your eyeball. Like that's
okay,
not something
but
we just figured out recently, but that's also irrelevant. We're talking about whether or
that we
not like we
saw.
should believe in a deity, right? So
Yeah,
like
so
what
you said,
would be the reason to believe in any of these ridiculous deity concepts?
so like I said to you, I just want to give you a new view of things, which is actually you can't say that God is imaginary. You cannot
I
claim
can.
that
I
to be.
can,
I
and I
mean,
did.
you can, but you can, but it doesn't mean that it's
My claim is very
relevant.
simple. Like the God that you follow, you can only demonstrate ever to live in your head and not anywhere else. That's why he's imaginary. Also, do you know what the phrase hyperhuman means?
Uh, yeah, I think it has a certain meaning. Why?
What do you think a hyperhuman is?
Um, a human who is at its max potential.
Do you think they exist?
Uh, Not completely, because I mean we'd have to be perfect in order to for them to exist, and we're not.
Do you think they will exist?
Possibly. I think that with AI, it's uh, AI, and with God, it's very possible that yes,
Do you believe
they
in
could
lizard
exist.
people?
No, I don't believe in the lizard people. I mean, it's a possibility, but I wouldn't say I believe in it. Um, I just don't know. There's so much that I don't know.
Do you think that people in Washington D.C. are kidnapping children to drink their blood and so they can get the adrenochrome?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, just checking.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, right. I was wondering how far this was gonna go. You know what I mean?
I have studied a lot of about UFOs,
Um,
and
Did you?
clearly there's something that is going on that's just very, very strange.
Well, I disagree. Actually,
Um,
I have friends at NASA who don't agree with that at all, and I'll take their word.
right. Well, you should look at it. Like you should go
Have.
really study it for
Mhm.
yourself and go look at all the evidence that there is and how
Oh,
much money the government has spent into studying it,
yeah.
because
Don't
there's
think there is
something
any.
there.
I'm sure there is. Well, listen, Zeal, thanks for coming up and sharing your perspective with us. But we're gonna get a believer in here that's got some answers. Okay.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Um, so about the spectrum of light, uh, we can see like 0.0015% of the spectrum of light, which basically means that we're blind. We're pretty much blind, okay? If we were to see 100% of the spectrum of light, we would be able to see so much more of what actually exists that we just cannot see. Um, and
Are you suggesting that there are things in material existence that we just can't see?
immaterial,
Yep.
yeah, like radio frequency, for example. That's proof that there's immaterial things that we cannot see,
No, I
but that
said
carries
material.
information.
Are there things in material existence that we can't see?
Material?
Yeah. Are there material things that exist that we can't see?
I would say material is in our dimension.
I
Not exactly sure what
I
you would
know.
call what
I
is in their
agree.
dimension.
My question was, are there things in the material world that we can't see?
Yeah, like
Like,
radio frequency, for example.
well, that's not
It's here.
a thing that exists. A radio signal is something moving through the atmosphere. Like you can't see a radio signal. You can see the particles moving.
You can see the radio frequency particles moving.
Yeah. Radio signals are just the atmosphere moving. Although there's a larger discussion about why radio signals work in outer space, and we can have that discussion later. But for the most part, if you're witnessing radio waves here on the Earth, it's because it's traveling through the atmosphere. Otherwise, you can't see it with like a normal instrumentation. It's not visible to the eyeballs in any way.
Right. So within our material dimension, there are things that we cannot see. For example, I sent a message to my friend over in Germany. It gets there, it travels there, and we cannot see it, yet it is happening. Yet we have discovered this technology.
No, we can see that
thousands of years
from
ago.
end to end.
Yes, but we cannot see it traveling there.
Yeah, you literally can. Yeah, with the right equipment, you certainly can.
That's the thing. With the right equipment, we can.
Well, yeah, because we can't observe things on the microscopic level. That's the whole problem that we have here. Everything you're describing, things that we can't see, we literally just can't see it because it's on the microscopic level. All you need is the right technology.
So
let me
I'm
just
trying to tell you is that
just hold on.
10,000 years
Zeal,
ago.
just pause. I ask you this question because it's relevant to our discussion. Our discussion, I'm trying to figure out, is do you believe that there are some like interdimensional beings or something that exist here in the material world and we just can't see them?
What I'm trying to say is that I don't know. It is possible. I'm trying to say that people can't say that it's impossible because basically in the spectrum of light,
I think it would be. Wouldn't we run into them?
Well, here's my reasoning. I'm just using logic. If you look at our world,
Right, but how do they interact with the physical world? If they're interacting with the physical world, that means we should be running into them. We should be bumping into them. We should be touching them.
Well, I cannot tell you that it is real, but what I'm trying to tell you is that we can't say that it's not real.
I disagree.
Because, well, I'm trying to make a case here. So my case is that we're basically blind.
But your case needs to start with rebutting the claim that I just made. If there's something that's here that we just can't see, but it's part of the material world and it can interact with the material world so much so that it can fly spaceships and things like that, then how come nobody can touch it?
I don't know, because there's all kinds of different dimensions. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly the answers to all the questions that you're asking, nor can I tell you something that's going to completely change your mind. I'm just trying to make a case for that logically that, that obviously there's so much more. Like clearly there's so much more.
Yeah.
If you look at our world,
I don't think there's interdimensional beings though, or gods or spaceships, or I would need something better than like a maybe and a trust me bro for that. But listen, Zeal, I enjoyed talking to you, but I got to get on to the next guest, okay?
Well, you didn't even listen to what I was trying to tell you. But
I don't think you had much to add to that. Don't worry about it.
If anybody has needed to touch grass, it was Zeal.
That's wild to me that people can believe that kind of nonsense. Weird. Steve, though, welcome back, Steve. Says, Doug, how come you didn't like my preference of not being haired? Do you mean hard, of not being hard? Doug wants you to be rock hard for him, but it's okay, Steve. We all know that you're flaccid. We knew that before you mentioned it because you got a picture of Trump in your profile picture, and we know that anyone who follows Trump is definitely flaccid. And Austin Arnold, thank you for the super chat, says the power of Christ compelled your cat to unplug your computer. Luckily, Doug willed the power to come back. You're right. I'm going to have to like move the dresser in front of it or something like that. Prevent Pi from taking care of things on his own. And X Million, thank you so much for the super chat, says rock hard for Doug and Sharon Stone. A Doug and A Sharon. I agree. A woman. People are always leaving off the ASS. Thanks for all you do, Justin. Well, listen, Maximilian, thank you so much for not leaving off the ass. We appreciate that. Make sure when you're worshiping Doug and Sharon Stone, never forget the ass. Never forget the ass. And Zakul, thank you for the super chat. Says Christianity, but Jesus has 6-pack of Dougs. Amen. He did. Have you seen him on the cross? He was ripped. He was ripped. And cereal, dude. I love cereal, by the way. In fact, I think Sarah's probably having a bowl of cereal right now as we speak. Probably strawberry shredded wheat. If you haven't tried it, try it. But he says, dark matter is material we can't see. It interacts with the material world through gravity, but we can't touch it because it doesn't have electromagnetic properties. Interesting. I think there's some questions about whether or not dark matter exists. I think there are theories, and a lot of people do think it exists. I think it's questionable whether or not it actually does exist and how many people believe it exists, but I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. It's possible. Shit, it's very possible that dark matter does exist. I'm agnostic on the dark energy, dark matter situation, but I'm not a physicist. Don't ask me about dark matter. I can't give you an intelligent answer. That's a good question for Dr. Blitz. I would definitely ask Dr. Blitz. But Flanker, thank you so much for the super chat. It says, can we please teach epistemology, skepticism, and critical thinking in schools for humanity's sake? I don't know if we're going to get that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but man, do we need it now more than ever. You know what I mean? We really do. Appreciate the super chat, Flanker. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Let me grab our next guest. V has been waiting for us in the guest box on YouTube. I just moved V into the screen, but I don't see V on the screen. Why is that? Hold on. I don't see V or hear V. What's happening here? Something's going on with the links. Is my Video Ninja scene not working? Why would you not be working, Video Ninja? That's weird. I tried to bring somebody up and it didn't bring them up. Did I break Video Ninja? Did I finally break it? Let me refresh it real quick. That's weird. I might have finally broke it. Might have finally broke Video Ninja. Shit, I can't get him on the screen. What's going on, Video Ninja? That's weird. Maybe what the hell? All right, I'll work on that. I'm going to get the next guest from TikTok in here, and I'll work on getting Mike from Video Ninja in after that. I don't know what's going on with Video Ninja. That's weird. I've never seen Video Ninja not work. We're going to get Hummingbird up in here. How you doing, Hummingbird? Humming? Humming? Humming, are you with us? Humming. I don't think Humming is with us. Okay. All right. Sorry, Humming. We'll drop you and move on to the next one. Welcome in, Lexus.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Just had to drop some kids off at their grandparents, keep the house quiet tonight.
Yeah, I get that. I get
What
that.
the fuck, man? What an amateur. I have to say, this is fucking amateur hour, man. It seems like. Are we here? Am I on?
Look at this
Is
guy
this what's
crashing.
going on?
Look at the guy crashing out. He's already crashing out. He didn't even get to talk yet.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm waiting to talk, man. Here we are.
All right, so Lexus, welcome in. We got an angry guy in the guest box. We'll get him next. So, Lexus, are you at least 18 and are you a believer?
I am 29 and I am a believer.
Cool. And which God do you believe in?
I believe in the one true God. I'm Christian. That's what I believe in.
Okay. And what would be the best argument or the best evidence for the Christian God?
My best evidence, or I'll say one of the best evidences that I can portray right now, is the existence of moral rights and wrongs and concepts that we very strongly adhere to in everyday society.
Okay, cool. So we probably agree that slavery was wrong, right?
Of course.
Okay. Can you show me in the Bible where it says slavery is wrong? Because I can show you in the Bible where it says it's okay.
I can. Actually, back in Leviticus 44, it talks about slavery. And I believe that's usually the reference point in which most people use to
Well,
reference slavery.
I think you mean 25:44 because there's no
I'm
Leviticus
sorry,
44.
25:44. Leviticus 25:44. Yes, correct.
Have you read this?
I have.
What do you think it says? When I pull it up, what do you think it's going to say? He's going to read it right now. He's not read it. I mean, he walked right into it. Lexus, no one can hear you when you swipe away from the app. We can't hear you, man.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Yeah. So in 25:44, it says, "As for the male and female slaves who you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire male and female slaves. You may also acquire them from among the aliens residing with you, and from their families who are with you have been born in your land. They may be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property. These you may treat as slaves, but as for your fellow Israelites, no one shall rule over the other with harshness." So God just said you can own the foreigners as slaves, did he not?
Yes, he did.
Okay, but you said slavery was wrong.
Oh, yes, it 100% is wrong.
Okay, so God was wrong when he said this.
No.
Okay,
It
so
was not.
slavery is not always wrong.
No. So when you go to Leviticus and it talks about taking in slaves, the translation for slave is just the common term that most people use.
Oh, interesting.
But
What's the
what's
Hebrew
being
word here for
used-
slave?
I don't speak the Hebrew.
Oh.
I know that I do go from the direct translation, but I don't
Oh.
speak Hebrew.
So how do you know
Yeah,
it's
but I do-
mistranslated?
I have to go through the translation. But I'm sorry, I can't swipe away from the app, so I gotta make sure that I'm staying here. But if you do pull up a Bible Hub, I believe.
Mhm.
I believe it's called Bible Hub.
So which
where
word in
they
here
talk-
needs retranslated?
Slave is usually translated to bondsmaid or bondservant.
Oh, that's an Old English word. Do you know what that means in the Old English dictionary?
Not in the Old English dictionary. No, I do not.
Yeah, it
But feel
means
free to educate me. Please educate me if I'm wrong. I want to make sure.
it means either a servant or a slave. It could be one or the other. It's the context that tells you what it means, which is a fitting description since the Hebrew words ama and eved can mean a servant or a slave depending on the context. Here it clearly is referring to a slave because it says that you will acquire them with your money, you'll purchase them, or you'll own them as property. It says they'll be inheritable property to you. You'll bequeath them to your children after you.
Right. So
That's a
I would
slave.
argue that actually, I would argue that the term being used would actually be servant, not slave.
Why?
But I can understand.
But-
I would because.
But why?
Why? The reason why is because if you read most of the chapters from Genesis to Leviticus, the nature in which God treats servants, and he talks about servants constantly throughout the Bible. He doesn't talk about slaves. He talks about servants. He talks about servants throughout the Bible, and servants, when treated, like for example, Abraham's servant that went to go fetch Isaac back in the time of
Yes,
Abraham when he was
Eliezer. Yeah, we know the
he was-
stories.
yeah, he was a servant, right?
I'm
And
sure
so
he
when-
was.
And so when they're talking here, and you can see that when your translation of bondservant and bondsmaid can be translated to servant and or slave, I would argue that it's referring to servant because it falls more in line with what the nature of how God intends people to be treated if they are to be at service to other people.
Is a
As matter
servant
of
free to
fact,
go?
A servant is free to go at the
Okay. Is a servant
release of
paid?
their master. Yes.
Okay. Is the servant owned his property?
A comparison to what property was being meant to by God when he talks to people as property. Yes.
Wrong again. Is a servant owned as property, meaning they have no autonomy?
the servant is owned as property, but when God refers to people being owned as property, it's not in the terms of being owned as an object, but being owned as a loving member.
And
There's
you'd
a
be
difference.
completely wrong on that. It says they may be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property. So he says that
inherit-
these slaves are inheritable property, meaning they belong to you. They don't have autonomy. I don't care if you think they're treating the slaves good or not. The act of owning another human being as property, and they don't have the freedom to leave, and they don't get paid, and then you get to beat them when they disobey you, that's called slavery.
Yes, but you're referring to slavery in the terms of through the eyes and gaze of how
No.
everybody today views.
No, I
slavery
didn't. I
today.
didn't say anything about today. I read you exactly
Well,
what
when
the
you reference-
I read you exactly what the Bible said. The Bible said you can own them as property. You'll pass them on to your children when you die. They'll be your slaves forever. These are not people that are allowed to leave. These are not people that are getting paid. In fact, in verse 39,
Actually-
God explicitly tells you that they're not going to get paid, because he uses the Hebrew word shakir to refer to the Hebrews. It says, if any who are dependent on you become so impoverished that they sell themselves to you, you shall not make them serve as slaves. They shall remain with you as hired or bound laborers. They shall serve with you until the year of Jubilee. A hired laborer is a shakir. They get paid. Slaves don't get paid. That's why he says, don't make them serve as slaves. They'll remain with you as a shakir. It says, they and their children with them shall go out from your authority. They shall go back to their own family and return to their ancestral property, for they are my servants who I brought out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as slaves are sold. You shall not rule over them with harshness, but you shall fear your God. As for the male and female slaves who you may have, it is from the nations around you that you may acquire male and female slaves. You may also acquire them from among the aliens residing with you and from their families who are with you, who have been born in your land. They may be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property. And the Hebrew text actually says as property, achuzah le'olam, which means property forever. So these are permanent slaves. They're not getting paid, and you get to treat them harshly.
So it doesn't tell. Where do you see that it tells that the children of Israel can treat them harshly?
Verse
Where do you see
46,
that?
he says, you may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property. These you may treat as slaves, but as for your fellow Israelites, no one shall rule over the other with harshness. So when it comes to the treatment of these slaves, he says, hey, these people, you can just treat them like slaves. But as for your fellow Israelites, don't treat each other harshly.
Okay. So when they're talking about taking in slaves from the nations around them, correct?
Mhm.
They're talking about taking in slaves from the nations around them. The nations around them were practicing all forms of types of idolatry and other things that I would say that we would probably condemn in today's society.
Okay, so
Really
people
harsh.
who follow the true God are allowed to enslave those who don't follow the true God.
No. So let me go ahead. And
That was
clarify.
what you
So
just set
no,
up.
I'm
You
going-
said that it was okay to
I'm-
enslave them because they didn't
So I
worship the
have
right
to-
God.
No, I have to give it in its full context, so if I may. I don't want to have to breed any sort of confusion. I want to make sure I give it in its full context, if I may. So, in its full context, the children of Israel, when they were in the nations around them, lots of nations that were around them, all types of nations that were around them, committing horrible acts that in this today's society, we would probably say different types of ways that we would punish.
Sure, show me the evidence of that.
Evidence of
That
how
that-
other
that-
people were
That
treated.
all of the non-Israelites were horrible people. Show me the evidence of that.
Well, the nations that they were around, yeah, they would practice all types of horrible acts. Yes, they
Sure,
would.
prove it.
And
Show
Egypt-
that to me. Show me where I can find that information.
So if you go into the Bible does talk about how certain people in the different were worshiping follow gods and practicing all types of sacrifices of humans.
Only
and eating
the
cannibalism,
Canaanites were doing that, and they weren't eating
and the
them.
nation, right? And
And
that's
it-
Canaanites
and the
were eating-
Canaanites aren't slaves. The Canaanites get exterminated. Deuteronomy chapter 20 tells you that, verse 17. You don't get
They
you
get
don't get you don't get to
exterminated, not
you don't get to
until they
enslave
don't-
you don't get to enslave the Canaanites. You have to murder all of them. You have to wipe them completely out. The nations around you that are not Canaanites, those are the people that you can take as slaves. We don't know anything about those people. He doesn't tell you who they are. He doesn't tell you anything about them.
But the nations around them would involve nations that would have been underneath certain influences similar to that of like Egypt and the nations that they came out of. And
They
in
did do
Egypt,
child
there were
sacrifice.
similar actions. I'm not saying that Egypt
No, they didn't.
specifically. I'm not saying Egypt specifically did child
Lexus,
sacrifices.
you're just making stuff up to justify slavery now. And it goes back to the same thing I said before. Are we allowed to enslave the heathen nations as long as it's the God followers enslaving the heathens?
Well, like I said, if in the context of the time period that they were in, like I said, in giving this full context, in the time of Leviticus, when they were told not to treat each other as
Lexus,
slaves,
your
because of the
argument
full-
is for objective morals. Objective morals don't change. If it was moral for the people of God to own the heathens then it should be moral now.
Well, it wasn't moral for anybody to own another human being and treat them as horrible individuals.
Yeah.
In period. But
Yeah, they're allowed to do it. You're allowed to own you're allowed to own these people as slaves for life, and you're allowed to beat them.
Okay, so now let me explain if I can finish up a contextualized concept without being interrupted.
Alexis,
I don't want to.
we know the context better than you do. We know every lie that's about to come out of your mouth. So just make the argument quick.
Let me.
The context, Lexus, the context won't help you. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
No, the context is actually very important. Actually, it's extremely important.
Go ahead and give me the context, and I'll cook you on it.
Cool. So the context in the time period in which they were enslaving people around them, like I said, lots of the nations that are around them engaged in horrible acts. One of which we know about the Canaanites. Well, let's talk about the fact that they just came from Egypt. Right?
Lexus, prove it.
Let's talk about the fact that we just came. Okay, so in the Bible, it talks about them coming just from Egypt. In Egypt, they were enslaving. They did enslave them in horrible, malicious ways, right?
No, they didn't.
We know this.
They had their own houses. We don't know this. You're making it up. They had their own houses. They put blood over the doorpost of their own houses that they lived in so that the angel of death would pass over them.
So you're saying that in the time that the children of Israel were living inside of Egypt, you're telling me that they were treated fairly.
What I'm saying is that they weren't slaves in Egypt according to the biblical narrative.
They weren't slaves. You're pulling the slave term for what they said treat as slaves. You're pulling it from one little tiny aspect of the Bible, and you're saying,
no, I'm not.
What slave
do slaves get their own houses? Do slaves get their own houses?
Do slaves
get their own houses? Answer the question.
In Egypt, they were given their own houses.
Bullshit.
But they were still slaves.
Bullshit. That's not how slavery worked in Egypt. We have the documentation from ancient Egypt. Slaves didn't get their own houses. They didn't get to buy property.
So then the Israelites, you're saying that the Israelites weren't enslaved by Egypt?
I'm saying the Bible is a lie. And what you're doing right now is making apologies for slavery. You're saying you believe in objective morals, which don't change, but it was okay for them to own slaves, but it's not okay for us to own slaves. Tell me why the objective morals changed.
Okay, so then let me go back to the context of the time period. If I can finish up the context of the time period, then I would be able to give you that.
The context doesn't help you. Just give me the argument.
So then here's the argument. During the time period in which they were told that they can have slaves of the heathens, the acts in which people around them were directly abhorrent to the nature of God and trying to set up the nation.
Prove what the nations were up to. Give me some evidence.
You don't believe that the Israelites were slaves in Egypt?
We're talking about the nation. Lexus, we're talking about all of the nations, not one nation that you knew something about. All of the nations around Israel, they're allowed to take slaves. You can't tell me that all of these nations were sacrificing their children and some bullshit like that.
I didn't say that all of the
Okay, so God said you can make slaves of all of the nations around you, the nations that are round about you, you can make slaves of. So tell me why it's okay. Tell me why it's okay to make slaves of those people.
To make slaves of the people that weren't following the true God. Let's go with this because you want to go in this direction. They weren't following the true God, which gave them allowance without moral morality to practice lots of sinful acts.
Like
They
what?
didn't have a moral
Name
structure.
one. Name one.
Name
one sinful act.
Slavery.
That's not a sinful act. God said you can do it.
God said it's a punishment to the nations around them.
He never said it was
not a
sinful.
punishment. It's a punishment to the nations around them.
It can't be, because he says you can sell. He says you can sell your daughter as a slave. In Exodus 21, Exodus 21:7 says you can sell your daughter as a slave.
Where say that verse one more time.
Exodus 21:7. He says you can sell your daughter.
21:7.
Exodus 21:7. He says you
Which
can.
is before the times.
He says you can. He said
times of,
the same time as Leviticus. Pay attention. Exodus 21:7. He says you can sell your daughter as a slave. What's the justification for selling your own daughter as a slave?
And when you read all of, and I mean,
what is the justification for being able to sell your daughter as a slave?
There is no justification for selling.
Okay,
your
so
daughter.
was it right or wrong when God said you can sell your daughter as a slave?
Reading the full verse in context. If you pull up the entire verse in context during the time of Exodus when it was stated, as opposed to just the one verse that you're pulling.
The context will never help you. I've read every last word of the Bible multiple times. I know that you haven't, which is why I know the context won't help you. Just running away to context is a losing argument every time. If you have an argument against my argument, just give me the fucking argument. But just crying context will never help you. So tell me, why was it okay? Why was it okay to sell your daughter as a slave then, but not now?
The time I would, because I can't pull away from them. If you hand me, the Bible right there, go ahead and hand me that. Yeah, pull it up right there. And you're reading the verse of what?
When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do, because the male Hebrew slaves actually get to go out. They get to go free in the 7th year. The women don't, which is why in verse 4, we see more of it. He says, if his master gives him a slave and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her masters, and he will go out alone. Because God commands them to make permanent slaves of the women, just not the men.
And this is and you're pulling from Exodus. Pull it back up again.
Exodus 21.
21. See, and this is another instance in where one of the translation in which you're pulling from uses the term slave instead of servant.
Because that's what the word means. I actually went to school and learned the language. Stop pretending like you know the language. You don't.
I literally told you I don't know the language.
I literally do know the language, Lexus. So stop getting up here and pretending like you do, because you don't know the language, and I actually went to learn the language at school, which is why I agree with the guy with the PhD who translated it as slave. The guy with the PhD in biblical Hebrew knows more than you.
Okay, I don't doubt that the person who understands Hebrew knows more than me. I'm
Great.
not even arguing that I know
so
Hebrew.
Then stop saying that it doesn't mean slave here when it clearly says slave.
So then what I am going to state, though, what I am going to 100% state, though, is both you're the one, and you said this, I didn't say this, but you also acknowledge that when I brought up the term of slavery being used in terms of bondservant and bondsmaid, you're the one who stated that the direct translation of the Hebrew text can be translated as both servant and slave. I didn't even state that.
And guess what tells you which one to use? It's your favorite word. Say it. Say it. Say it.
I didn't understand what you were just saying. Say it one more time.
What's the one thing that tells you how to translate a word that's got a wide semantic range? What's the thing?
Oh, pick me. I know.
Oh, Dr. Joe, what's the answer?
Context.
Yeah, there you go. The context. Now, what do we call someone who is sold as property and doesn't get to go free?
They would be sold as a slave.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so when the translation is translated as a slave, referring to somebody who is sold and doesn't get to go free, then it means they're a slave.
But then the nature of God and his people, if you follow throughout the entire history, and when God tries to establish his nation, when he establishes the nations through Abraham, when they mention any aspect of servants and slaves being mentioned in it. They are described as servants.
No,
So the
they're not.
nation, if we know, you would have to be able to acknowledge that when God acknowledged,
They're literally slaves born in the household of Abraham. God blessed Abraham with slaves born into his household. In Isaiah chapter 14, God literally says that they're going to take the Babylonians captive and that they're going to make slaves of their captives in the same way that they were made slaves of. God is totally down with the foreigners being slaves, and you know it.
God is, and as a punishment, yes, for not being able to worship God in the way.
Okay, then what was wrong with the Christians enslaving the heathens?
I didn't say there was anything wrong with the Christians.
Okay, so then there was nothing. Then there was nothing wrong with the Atlantic slave trade, was there?
No, that's not true.
What was wrong with it? It was a Christian nation enslaving heathens who didn't believe in Christianity.
They didn't worship God. They didn't worship God how God intended either. And they weren't doing
God.
that
God intended them to own slaves. The Bible says so.
And they weren't doing that.
Bible, show me
for the purpose.
Lexus,
they weren't doing
Lexus,
that.
show me Lexus, show me the Bible passage where God says owning a slave is a sin. Show me that.
I think my microphone went off. Did my microphone just go off?
No, I muted you because you can't shut up. Show me the Bible passage that says owning a slave is a sin.
It doesn't say that owning a slave is a sin in the Bible.
So then don't insinuate that it's non-Christian. It's certainly a Christian thing to do. And the president and the vice president of the Confederacy even agreed. Jefferson Davis, in one of his speeches, literally said, talking about the morality of slavery, he says, "Is it not the cause of Christianity? It cannot be, for servitude is the only agency through which Christianity has reached that degraded race, the only means by which they have been civilized and elevated." The slave traders in the South viewed the act of slavery as bringing the heathens to Christianity. So what was wrong with that?
What was wrong with that is that the intention in which they did use it, even by the context in which the Bible states,
you don't know what their intentions are, Alexis. I'm asking you, what was wrong with Christians owning slaves of the heathens in order to bring
We're not going to assume
in order to bring them to Christianity. If I was a Christian, I said I want to own slaves and bring them to Christianity, would it be okay for me to do that? These guys are crazy.
You say that the intention is not relevant.
Lexus, listen. Stop being a coward. Stop being a coward and answer my question. If I was a Christian and I wanted to own slaves with the intent of bringing them to Christianity, and they were coming from a heathen nation, what would be wrong with that? Give me the answer. I can almost guarantee he's not going to answer.
Okay. So like I said, what you're calling, what we would call slavery back then would be called prisoners today.
No, it wouldn't.
Yes, it would.
No, it wouldn't.
We own them. They're owned inside of prisons of right now.
That's called. Oh, this is a huge fucking pivot. We're not talking about talking about arresting people, Lexus. Stop being a coward and answer my question. If I was a Christian and I wanted to own slaves with the intention of bringing them to Christianity, would I be okay in doing it? What would be wrong with it?
The Bible doesn't even state that you're allowed to.
Lexus, answer the question. What would be wrong with it?
The straightforward answer is no. And the thing that would
there we go. Thank you for finally saying it. In your worldview, there's nothing wrong with Christians owning heathens as slaves. You finally admitted it. That is the reductio of your position. So
no, it's not.
So then what was
say a word in edgewise?
Okay. Well, then maybe if you answer my question directly, I wouldn't have to mute you. So I'll ask you, since apparently you didn't say the thing I thought you said, let me ask you again. What would be wrong if I was a Christian and then I decided to own slaves of the heathen nations? What would be wrong with that?
The Bible does not tell you that you can buy slaves of the heathen nations for the purpose of converting them.
Okay, then you could. Then why did he say you can buy them?
Because it was a punishment, not a conversion.
Okay, and why are they being punished?
Because of their acts that they committed during the time period of not worshiping the true God and how he intended to
And
be worshipped.
do the heathens from the other nations worship God?
Do the heathens from the other nations? Let's say that America.
It's a yes or no,
was
Lexus. Do the heathens in other nations worship God?
heathens in other nations do not worship the one true
Okay,
God.
okay. So then by the same criteria you laid out, I should be allowed to take
Yes.
them as slaves as their punishment for worshiping the wrong God.
No, and I will explain why.
The
If I
amount of lies and backflips you have to hold this position is wild to me.
It's consistent with
It's
the
not,
Bible. It's consistent
and it's
with the Bible.
embarrassing too.
Because if you understand, right, the reason why Jesus came, then it undoes that law that was stated back in Exodus. And
No,
back in
it
Leviticus.
didn't. God said to follow
Yes,
the
it
law
did.
forever. In Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 1, 12:1, 12:28, 5:29, he says to follow the law forever. Jesus
Yes,
said
and
in Matthew
Jesus
5 to follow
came,
the law
and
forever.
Jesus said, Jesus said that I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And that
Okay,
and then
and what
later
is it?
on,
And what does
he
the word abolish?
confirms-
And what does the word
he
abolish?
confirms-
What does the word abolish mean?
It means that he didn't come to undo the law.
Oh, okay,
But
okay,
to-
okay. Thank you. You
Yes,
said it.
so then
Yeah.
he
Okay.
came
So
to-
if he didn't
then
come,
he came to-
if he didn't come to undo the law, then the law is still in place, isn't it?
No, because he fulfilled it.
No, fulfill can't mean abolish. He said, I did not come to abolish, which means no matter
Right.
what you do with the word fulfill cannot mean abolish. So it has
Well,
it has to have a different meaning than abolish. Do you know what the word fulfill actually means?
It means to follow out.
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
context.
Yeah. So when I follow
Yeah,
the law
so
to
he
buckle my
follows out the law.
seatbelt, the law doesn't actually go away, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Did I? So
But the price of
okay.
the
So
law,
when
the
I
penalty-
so when I buckle my seatbelt, am I fulfilling the law to buckle my seatbelt?
No, you're not.
I am.
Not
Yes.
fulfilling-
Yes, I am. That's how fulfilling laws work, right? When the requirements for buckling your seatbelt is you get in, you buckle your seatbelt, and then you drive. And if I do that, that means I fulfilled the law of buckling your seat. That means.
Yes, you did do. Yes. if
Okay.
you buckle
So
your
does the
seatbelt,
law
and
go
then if
away
you
when
don't
I
buckle
does
your
the law
seatbelt,
go away
and
when I
if you
fulfill
don't
it?
buckle your seatbelt,
Does the law go
right?
away when I fulfill it, Lexus?
No, it doesn't go away.
Okay. Now, does the word fulfill and the word abolish mean the same thing?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so when Jesus says, I came not to abolish, but to fulfill, he can't mean that he's getting rid of the law. He's literally saying the opposite. He's saying, I did not come to get rid of the law. I came to do the law. This is why he follows it with, truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass away from the law until all is accomplished. Did heaven and earth pass away?
No, it did not.
Okay, and then he says, therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So does following the law make you great in the kingdom of heaven?
Yes, it does.
Okay, does not following the law make you the least in the kingdom of heaven?
No, it definitely makes you the least in the kingdom of heaven.
Okay, so then that means the best thing we could do if we love Jesus is to follow the law that he supposedly gave if you think he's God.
Yes, and he gave the law back in Leviticus. Now, if I go into, right, talking about why Jesus died on the cross for everyone's sins, if you, with your analogy of the seatbelt, right, if you don't buckle your seatbelt, then there's something you have to do. You have to answer for not buckling your seatbelt. That is a penalty that you will have to pay. And that
Penalties are irrelevant. We're talking about whether or not we should follow the law.
Well, like I said, if the slavery was a punishment done to the heathens, not a form of transitioning into Christianity, but in terms of a punishment,
Doesn't matter.
slavery was a punishment.
Should we follow the law?
does.
Yes or no?
See, you're saying it doesn't matter, but I'm explaining it in
Should
detail,
Christians
and you're-
follow the law? Yes
How
or no?
can I
Lex?
answer your question? if
Lexus,
you jump to another question
it's
before
a-
I finish answering it.
Because you didn't answer my question. You're pivoting to a new topic. I'm asking, should
the same
people
topic.
follow the law of God? Does God want you to follow that law?
Yes, God wants you to follow the
Okay.
law
And does the law say that you're allowed to take slaves?
as a punishment. Yes.
No. Okay. Show me where it says as a punishment only.
Literally in every single
Show me.
instance. In which,
Show me. Alexis, show me. Show it to me because you're lying. You're a liar.
Okay, so let me go ahead and pull it up for you. Let's go back to Leviticus. And we're going to go ahead and go through the scripture again. Leviticus 25.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go through the entirety. And even if we take into consideration that you call them slaves, let's call them slaves exactly how you say it.
I don't
And
care
we're
what
not
you
gonna
call
change
them. You can call them your
We're not gonna
butler.
change it.
You can call them your maid. None of that matters. There are people that are
Okay,
owned
cool.
as property.
Well, we're gonna
They're
stick
owned
how-
for
we're gonna
life.
stick how you
They're
interpret
not
it. We're
allowed
gonna
to
stick
go
how you
free,
interpret it.
and they're treated harshly.
Okay, it doesn't say anything about treating them harshly.
It does. Yeah,
Does
it certainly does.
Where
It
say
says
treat harshly?
says you may treat them as slaves, but as for your
You're
fellow
making an
Israelites,
assumption.
no one shall rule over the other with harshness. If you say,
You're
listen, if you have two children and you say, listen, you can treat this one like a slave, but don't treat the other one harshly. You're implicitly saying that the first one you're allowed to treat harshly. If you didn't want any of them to be treated harshly, you would say don't treat anyone harshly, but it doesn't say that.
The nature, and again, I'm going to just go straight to the scripture. We're not going to jump around. We'll just go straight to the scripture on this one. Because again, we're not going to try and imply or change or anything. Because if I try to imply or change anything, you're going to say you can't do that. But
Yeah.
if you imply and change anything, we're also going to stick with that same lesson. that
No,
you
this
can't
is
do
how
that
words
as well.
work. When you,
Okay, so
when
then
you
we're gonna
literally
stick
say
to
you
how
can
the
treat
words-
somebody like a slave, and then it says, but these other people don't treat them harshly. That but is very important. That means in contrast to these other people, meaning this only applies to one group of people, not to the other group of people. That's just how words work.
So then let's go. So right here, if any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to you,
I'm sorry,
do not make them
are Israelites
slaves.
foreigners?
We're going. Let me finish.
Wait,
If they-
are Israelites
we're-
foreigners?
Okay, then I'll skip down to the part where you're talking about. We're going to skip down to the part you're talking about because your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them, you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life. But you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly, which is where you get the buts from, right? If a foreigner residing among you, going completely, now we're in 47.
Mhm.
If a foreigner residing among you becomes rich, and if any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to the foreigner or to a member of the foreigner's clan, they retain the right of redemption after
Mhm.
they have sold themselves. One of their relatives may redeem them. An uncle or a cousin or a blood relative in their clan may redeem them, or if they prosper, they may redeem themselves. They and their buyer are count to the time of the year that they are sold themselves, the year of Jubilee, right? That was what you were referencing prior, right?
Mhm.
So we're all referencing that prior. Again, not changing the text. The price of their release is to be based on the rate paid at hire. So all
No,
of these,
they're not
and
paid.
I can continue, right? Wait, what did you say?
It doesn't say anything about them being paid.
The price
Mhm.
the price for their release is to be based on the rate paid. I just said I'm just reading the text. I'm
That
not
doesn't.
changing
That,
the text.
you're not reading the text. What are you reading?
I'm reading the text. The price.
What version are you reading from?
This is the new English version. This is literally, again, I'm pulling from Leviticus 25:50. If you want to read it from your version, go ahead and read it. They shall compute
Mhm.
with the purchaser the total from the year when they were sold themselves to the alien unto the Jubilee year. The price of the sale shall be applied to the number of years. The time that they were with their owner shall be rated as a time hired laborer. Hired laborer, right there.
As the time of a hired laborer. They're not getting paid.
As the time of a hired laborer.
As the time of a, you got it. Yeah. At the time of a hired laborer, not the pay of a hired laborer, meaning you work, meaning you work your debt off and they calculate your debt as though you were a paid laborer. and then you get your freedom at a particular point in time unless somebody redeems you.
Okay, and then this is who is this referring to?
The Israelites, because Israelites were not
Right.
meant to be permanent slaves of the foreigners. We're talking about what
Right.
the Israelites are doing to the foreigners, not what the foreigners are allowed to do to the Israelites. So you're
Exactly.
barking up the wrong
the
tree.
justification-
So
No, I'm not
we're
barking up.
what
This is
we're
actually
what
completely to
we're
my point.
what
This is
we're
completely to
addressing
my point.
what we're addressing
This is
is what the
completely to my point.
Israelites are allowed to do to the foreigners.
This is what so we are, and I'm going to take this.
You're-
and I'm
you're
taking
not.
this.
Lexus.
The reason I read that.
Lexus.
Let me finish. Let me finish. If
Lexus,
you let me
I'm
finish-
not
if
going to let you.
let me
I'm
finish-
not going to let you finish because you have no idea what
Oh,
you're
then-
doing. Verses 40,
do.
verses 47 and beyond are what happens when an Israelite falls
Israelite.
prey to a foreigner. We're talking about what foreigners are going to be done. What the Israelites are doing to the foreigners. The other way
Okay.
around. We don't care
All right,
about
cool.
this
So
law
then we're-
section.
so
What we
why
care
you-
about
so-
is what
so
does
we're
God say?
comparing-
What does God say the Israelites can do to the foreigners? And just so you know, Lexus, I don't know if everyone here is tracking. I'm sure they are. My microphone is way fucking louder than yours. If you want to have a productive conversation, stop talking over me. No one will ever hear you. You're just going to be mumbling forever in the background of this video. It's being saved on YouTube. It's going to be on the internet for literally fucking ever. And they're only going to hear you being shouted over because you're not adult enough to have an actual conversation. So if you want to have a conversation, stop talking while I'm trying to talk. And I'll stop interrupting you when you do the same courtesy to me.
Awesome. Fantastic. I will do that. That's fair. Cool.
Now, the section we care about is what does God say the Hebrews are allowed to do to the foreigners? That's what we care about. The section you're reading right now has nothing to do with that.
Okay. Can I speak?
Are you going
Awesome.
are you going to address
Now-
the thing
now
that I
I'm going
said?
to- I gotta speak. I gotta speak.
But are you going to address
So
the thing that
now-
I said?
I would love to.
Okay.
And like I said, the reason that I read what I read wasn't to try and divert from what you're addressing in the previous scriptures before. But what I am doing is by reading this, because this is the nature and how God wants his people to be treated, and the nature of how he is telling the Israelites to treat the other nations around them. He is creating a juxtaposition with how people underneath him, when you worship him and you worship him how he intended, are to be treated, versus how people who don't worship him are to be treated at that time period. Now we go to, like we said, I jumped to all the way to the forward part where Jesus Christ comes, when Jesus says, I fulfilled the law. To taking into you directly into your point, when you said, when I buckle my seatbelt, I fulfill the law. When I unbuckle my seatbelt, I don't fulfill the law. There is a punishment for not fulfilling the law that both Jesus and God, as one, both put into place. One of those punishments that God
Lexus,
puts into place.
You weren't listening.
You're interrupting.
Lex, I'm going to interrupt you because you keep rambling on something completely unrelated that I already addressed. And if you were capable of listening, you would have heard what I said about it. It doesn't say anything here about these people being slaves because they were punished. There's no punishment mentioned here. You went back to Leviticus 25 to prove that there was punishment being entailed here, and I'm still waiting for you to show me where it says anything about these people being punished.
Luxus, I'm confused. You've been insisting intermittently that people were owned by other people because they were evil, they worshipped other gods, they had practices that were inherently harmful. There are people today who are worshiping other gods, or not worshiping a god at all, or practicing witchcraft. Where is it that your God said, "Don't own people"?
Am I allowed to answer this question? Because I do not want to be judged. I don't want to be judged for going onto this topic if it doesn't relate to the.
I already asked you to give me the answer to this question. You refused to do it. I'd love for you to answer it.
Okay, cool. So in this time period, like I was saying about Jesus Christ, during the time you're saying for this time period, why
He can't answer it. He's incapable of answering the question.
Am I going to be allowed to finish?
Show the Bible passage where God said that it's not okay to own slaves. Because saying
It
that
doesn't direct.
you
Okay.
keep going back to Matthew 5, where Jesus fulfilling the law, doesn't say anything about punishment. It doesn't say that the slavery is a punishment. And Jesus didn't say that the law went away with. We
Okay,
already addressed
so
this. It's like you're not even
God-
listening. What conversation are you having right now? Because you're not having a conversation with me.
Well, again, you just told me that I'm allowed to answer her question. If I can't answer her question and your question at the same time, I would love to be able to finish my train, but I can't finish it because
Okay,
every time
well, I'll tell you,
talk to
I'll let you finish. I'm going to tell you the exact same thing I just said twice, and I'm going to force you to answer it honestly.
All right, I'm all for it. Cool. So during the time period, right, where that happened, it was a punishment, but you guys are saying because it doesn't specifically explicitly say that it was a punishment, it can't possibly be interpreted as a punishment. When Jesus comes and he says, I fulfilled the law, he fulfilled the law and for all of us, meaning that he took the punishment for us.
Show me where it says it was a punishment. We just wasted the last 10 minutes. You said you would show me where it was a punishment. Show me the passage where it says the slavery is the punishment, or you're talking in circles. Nobody gives a damn. Your point is meaningless until you can show us where it says the slavery is a punishment.
I am going to directly say right now, as of right now, slavery is not directly stated in Leviticus as a punishment for that time period. It doesn't say specifically these are a punishment.
Then
But
your
if
talking
Jesus-
point
but if-
fails.
Not if you read the entirety of the Bible.
I've read all of it
All of the
multiple
concepts.
times in the original language. Your argument falls apart. Your argument depends on slavery being a punishment, and you just admitted that you have no way of demonstrating that the slavery is in fact a punishment.
Actually, all I did was admit that in that particular verse, it does not say that slavery is a punishment.
Then
That's all I said.
find me one that does say it.
Okay. If you were to give me, well, I'm not even going to say that. I'm not even going to say that because that's setting up for a completely
Because
different
in
thing.
Exodus 21, God literally says you can sell your own daughter as a slave. Do you think she's being punished?
I don't think anything in Exodus talks about punishing daughters for being slaves.
Do you think
But I also
children
don't
that are
agree-
born into slavery need to
also-
be punished?
I also don't agree with the.
Do you
Hebrew
think that
direct
children
translation
born
just
into
going for
slavery
that.
should be punished, Lexus?
I can't finish a single sentence.
I
every time
need
talk
you
over
to
me.
actually focus. This is not your live stream. If I ask you a question, just answer the question, then we can move on. Do you think that children born into slavery need punished?
That children born into slavery need to be punished? Is that the question?
Yeah.
I think that if children are born into slavery and that don't need to be punished,
Do they deserve to be punished?
their Bible clearly states that there are sins of the father. They don't deserve to be punished either. But
Okay,
there
so God
there
sets up
are
a system of
consequences.
punishment that's not fair then, according to you.
No.
You just said it's not fair that they're being punished for this slavery. Or they're being
No, it's
punished
not.
with. Okay, so it's not fair that they're being punished with slavery. Then why did God say that you can own slaves that are born in your household?
Because that is a direct consequence of the acts of previous generations.
Well, why
before them.
why didn't he tell them to set them free then?
Because it's a direct consequence of those acts from the previous
But it's
generations.
not a
before
direct
them.
consequence. It's a decision God made. God could have said, "Don't own slaves that are born in your household. Raise them like they're your own children. And let them go free." Then he didn't say that. He said they're your permanent slaves.
He said you're permanent slaves because of the consequences of the generations before them.
But
God could. You're
but-
right. You're 100% right.
But
You're
Lexus,
100%
the
right.
consequences
I'm giving you-
the consequences are set by God. God could say
Yes, they are.
that these aren't the consequences, but he said that these are the consequences. So if God
Well,
could
you-
say that the consequences is that your parents go into slavery, but you get to go free, he could have said that, couldn't he?
Yes, he could have.
Okay, so this is the dog shit argument. Try a better one.
No. It's the same argument in which you stated that Jesus can't change the law because he's fulfilling the law.
It's not even close to that argument.
It is the exact same argument.
No,
I'm gonna
it's
tell you why
not,
it
because
is the
God
same.
said that you can have slaves born in your household. You said that slavery was only a punishment, but slaves born in someone's household didn't do anything wrong. They don't need to be punished. Your own Hebrew daughters didn't do anything wrong to be sold into slavery. They don't need punished. Saying that slavery is just a punishment is a bullshit argument, and you know it.
No, it's not. And
It is.
and I can tell you how.
Then find me the passage where it says that you can sell your daughter as a slave as a punishment. Find me that.
I can't find you the passage that says that directly, because if I
right, because you're making shit up, Lexus. You're lying. You're lying through your teeth because you can't be honest.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit.
Then don't tell me that all these forms of slavery are a punishment, because they're not. The daughter born into sold into slavery didn't do a damn thing wrong.
No, but the generations before them, before them did, which is why slavery even existed.
Bullshit. It doesn't say anything about that. It doesn't say anything about anyone doing wrong. It says, if you sell your daughter as a slave, this is what happens. It doesn't say anything about it being because your parents were sinful. Not a damn thing. You're making that shit up. You're trying to find a reason to justify slavery. And even if that daughter's parents did do something wrong, it still doesn't justify her being sold as a slave. Nothing justifies selling your daughter as a slave.
I know, but that's the whole point of stating that it being as a punishment goes into the nature
punishment
in which God,
for who? The daughter? She didn't do anything wrong. Why does God allow you to sell your daughter as a slave? Why? Why wouldn't he just say, don't sell your daughters as slaves? Why wouldn't he say that?
Am I going to be able to answer this question?
Give me the answer. Why wouldn't God just say, don't sell your daughter as a slave? She didn't do anything wrong.
Because if God were to change the consequences for people's actions today,
it's not,
as they always
Lexus, stop going to consequences. It has nothing to do with this. What you're saying is that we shouldn't be selling daughters as slaves. Why didn't God just say, don't sell your daughters as a slave? Consequence has nothing to do with it. She didn't do anything wrong.
No, but the Bible clearly states that the sins of the father will be visited upon the sons of the son.
It does not matter. That's Exodus 34:7, and nobody gives a shit. God has control over the consequences. He decided what the consequences are. This is not some objective consequence floating around in the universe that God has to obey. He invented the consequences. If you think that the consequences are not fair, then that's because God made the consequences unfair. That's still on him. Do you understand any of this?
I think you said it very beautifully right there. Because God is the one who made the consequences, God gets to decide how the consequences are followed out and what the consequences follow forward. If you find it unfair, you have a problem with God's consequences.
Thank you. Okay, so then you have a problem with God. You think that it's unfair to sell your daughter as a slave, don't you?
I don't think it's unfair to sell your daughter as a slave during that
Oh,
time period.
what a piece of shit. What a piece of shit. It was never a good thing to sell your daughter as a slave. Let me ask you a question. If a man commits a sin, would it be okay to have his wives raped as punishment for that?
Would it be okay for I can't even repeat that.
But is there ever a case in all periods of time, in all of history, was there ever a case in which a man, if he commits adultery, the punishment for that should be that his wife or his wives get raped?
In my humanity, I would have to say no.
Okay, so
in my humanity, I could say no.
So could there ever be a situation in which that would be justified?
I think probability-wise, yes, but I could not say...
How? No, justified. I said justified. I'm not asking if it happened. I'm asking, would it ever be justified?
No, I am talking about justified. I cannot justify it. I cannot justify in which that would ever be okay.
And why can't you?
I'm pretty sure... Why can't I?
Yeah.
Justify whether or not it's okay for...
Yeah, why could you never justify it?
Father sin? Because I don't know the acts that go into leading that father into that decision, nor the acts that go into leading that person into the other people making that decision. One of the things
The wives didn't commit the sin. I'm asking if a man commits a sin, if a man goes and commits adultery with another woman, is it ever okay for that man's wife or wives to then be raped as a punishment for what that man did? Is there ever a reason why that would be okay?
It would never be okay.
Right, because they didn't commit the sin, did they?
No, they didn't commit the sin.
Okay, now I'm going to read you a story that I can guarantee you've never read. And this is the last topic we're going to talk about because you're the most dishonest caller we've had all night. When David committed adultery with Bathsheba, there was two punishments. One punishment was that this child born to the union was made sick and died. The second punishment was David's wives got raped. God speaks through Nathan, and he says, "Thus saith the Lord, I will raise up trouble against you from within your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor. He will lie with your wives in broad daylight, for you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel in broad daylight." And then it happened. He raised up somebody in the household of David. He started a coup against his own father. And then when his father went on the run, Absalom stormed the palace, took 10 of David's wives, put them on top of the palace, and supped with them in broad daylight as a display of force over taking his father's palace.
Okay. Am I going to be able to speak to this, or are you going to yell over me again?
I'm probably going to yell at you because I can guarantee you're going to say that they consented and you're going to blame the victims, aren't you?
Nope.
All right. Tell me how it was justified for these women to be raped.
Because of David's sin, God withdrew his presence from David. God's presence is love. And because God's presence is love and mercy and grace and everything that God's presence is, when God withdraws his presence from somebody as a punishment, all sorts of hell is allowed to break loose because
did he withdraw his presence from the wives too?
Yes.
Why? Did they commit a sin?
No, but it was all.
So why did he withdraw his presence from the wives? They didn't commit the sin. David did.
Because that's the consequence of sinning against God.
No, it's not. The consequence of sinning against God isn't that innocent people should suffer. That's not a consequence that should happen. God says, I will raise up trouble. Remember, no one can hear you when you talk over me. It's never going to work. Every time you talk over me, all you've ever done is just wasted your breath. So God says, I will cause trouble to raise up against you from within in your own house. I'm causing it to happen. Could God have punished David without causing the wives to be raped? Could he do that?
I'm pretty sure there's ways that God could punish David directly without ever involving another individual.
Okay, so then is there a justification for having the wives raped, yes or no?
God withdrew his presence.
It doesn't matter. I'm asking, is it justified to punish the wives for a crime they never committed when God doesn't have to actually do that?
It's not a punishment as much as it's a consequence of withdrawing.
It's not a consequence. It's a punishment. God said, I am doing this thing. God decided to do it. He decided what the punishment would be. He decided that the punishment was going to be the women getting raped. Could he have done it? Could he have punished David without the women getting raped?
I already answered that question.
Okay, yes, which means the rape of the women wasn't necessary, correct?
No, that's not true.
Okay, no, it is true. If he could do it without the raping of the women, that means the raping of the women wasn't required. It's unnecessary. By definition, something that's not required is called unnecessary, which means he unnecessarily had the wives of David raped. That's what he did.
No, and I'm going to explain why if I can. I'm asking if I can explain why. If I'm allowed to. I don't want to.
Go ahead. I'm going to call you a piece of shit since you're done, though.
Awesome. So, like I was saying, when God withdraws his presence, the punishment is God withdrawing his presence. And when God withdraws his presence, God
it's like he doesn't listen to a single word I said. Lexus, did you hear what I said when you said this the first time?
You said that it's God directly doing it?
No.
So you're implying
wrong.
You're implying that God directly...
we'll try. This is what frustrates the fuck out of me, Lexus. Every time you raise a point, I address it, and then you pretend like I didn't say anything about it. That's why you're driving me up the fucking wall, is because I'm directly commenting on everything you say, and then you pretend like you didn't hear a word I said. I commented on your removal of the presence of God. Could God have removed his presence from David and not from the women and done it in a way that the women didn't get raped? Could he do that?
Yes.
That means the rape of the women was not necessary. Do you understand?
That's not true.
It's 100% true. Why did they need to be raped?
There are reasons in which different things happen to different people, because if God were to
that's not an answer. You can't say there are reasons. Give me an actual answer why the wives had to be raped. What's the reason?
Because if God were to punish David directly, right? If he to punish David directly without involving anybody in the kingdom or anybody around David or anybody that would hurt David, that would not be a punishment for David to realize the actions in which he did.
Yes, it fucking would. He killed his own son. He had his son killed. You think having your child killed isn't enough for you to realize you did a bad? He admitted his sin. He repented of his sin before the punishment ever got enacted. He was already remorseful. He already repented of his sin. None of these other punishments needed to happen.
And what happened right after David heard about his son dying? What did he do?
He stopped his mourning. He only mourned while the child was sick, and when the child finally passed, he quit mourning.
Exactly. So then it means
he already knew he did wrong. He was already remorseful for his sin. God had already forgiven his sin. When Nathan approaches him, he repents of his sin, and Nathan says, God has already put away your sin, which means the whole deal was over. He didn't have to have the women raped.
No, the whole deal wasn't over. And the reason the whole deal wasn't over, and the reason the whole deal wasn't over is because David during the time period was, I'm not even going to say during the time period, David was the kind of person who valued the people and the people around him more than he valued his own well-being. Punishing David directly for the things that
you already admitted that God could punish David without the raping of the women.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been a punishment to David. David would have gladly.
Yes, it would have. It would have been a punishment to him.
No, David would have gladly taken anything that God.
No, would have done wrong again. It would have been a horrific punishment to him. He was because he repented. When he was confronted with the sin, before even a single punishment was given to him, he repented and was remorseful.
He repented.
He was a man after God's own heart, according to the own book. The man that God chose to leave the United Monarchy, the man after God's own heart, the one that is the model for the Messiah. You're telling me the guy that God chose as the foundational model for the Messiah needed to have his wives raped so he would learn a lesson? If that's the case, if even King fucking David couldn't learn a lesson without having his wives raped, what hope do we have? Your wife should be raped. Everyone's wives should be raped. If even King David couldn't learn a lesson without his wives being raped, I hope you understand what kind of a piece of shit argument you're giving right now and how bad it makes you look right now. You're looking like an absolute piece of shit right now, justifying slavery and raping women who didn't commit a single sin.
Okay, so if I'm going to continue to talk, what I'm going to say is, during that time period, David clearly states through multiple turns of his remorse, when he gets back into the kind of person that we acknowledged as a man after
again,
God's own heart.
He didn't respond to anything I just said. It's like he's in a completely different conversation. Respond to the words that just left my mouth, Lexus.
You just called me a bunch of pieces of shit. There's no
because you are a piece of shit because you're incapable of having an adult dialogue. I've been on you with over an hour now, and you haven't been honest the entire time you've been up here. What you've been doing is waiting for me to stop talking so you can carry on your talking points without addressing a single thing I ever did, I ever said. Meanwhile, the whole time I've been up here, I've been addressing every point that you raise face on, which is why you're driving me insane and everybody else here insane, because not only are you a piece of shit, you have no idea you're a piece of shit. At least we get people up here that know that they're being pieces of shit while they're being pieces of shit.
Well, I would like, again, I'm going to clearly state, if you want me to, and I've been addressing you exactly how you want me to address me. Anytime that I get into a point that doesn't directly fall into the realm of which you want me to directly say, oh, I'm going to say this and I'm going to say that.
Because
you just fall
Lexus,
apart. You
I
yell, you
asked
scream, and
you to respond to the argument I gave in response to your argument. That's how arguments work. You say something, I respond to the thing you said. I say the thing, you respond to the thing I said. What you're doing is you're saying a thing, I'm responding to the thing, and then you're ignoring the thing that I said, moving on to a different argument. That's not how conversations work. That's not even how fucking debates work. Respond to the thing coming out of my mouth before you move on to a new topic, or there's no debate being had. So I already told you, we already had a line of dialogue, and you already said that God could punish David without the raping of the wives. And then I said, David is the man who is after God's own heart. Nobody has been like David since David. That's why he's the role model for the actual Messiah. So if David couldn't even take a punishment without having his wives raped, then what hope does anybody else have? By the same logic, anybody who has a husband committing adultery, their wives, by logical extension, should be raped too, because we can't be any better than David. We can't learn any better than David, because David is the role model. Do you understand my argument?
I understand it clear as day.
Now, okay, now respond to the words that left my mouth. Don't pivot to something new.
I won't. Directly you said, because David is the role model in which going after God's own heart, if he sinned and the consequences for his sin were what you said they were, what hope do any of us have to be able to be saved from the consequences of our sin? And
nope.
The Bible
you're about to fucking preach
Jesus.
And don't do it. Don't
That's
fucking
Jesus.
do it. That's not an answer to my question. The answer
Jesus.
to my
it says it directly
not
in
even
the Bible. It says that that's Jesus.
Not even fucking close to my argument. My argument is, should the punishment for literally everybody else since David, should it have been the result of the wives being raped? That's what I'm asking. I'm not asking you about an eschatological question. I'm asking you about why David wives needed to be raped, but nobody else has ever needed to be raped. Why just David when David was the best of us?
Muted Mike. Because David is the person who would take any punishment that God would give him without being worried about how's punishment. But notice how every punishment that David took, even to the part where David created a census for the people around him, and the punishment was half of the people dying. David prayed and bade God, don't punish me. Don't punish the rest of the nations. Don't punish anybody else.
I know, 2 Samuel chapter 12, you're making it even worse. God killed 70,000 Israelites for the sin of David. Why does God kill people so often that didn't commit the sin?
Because he was the representative for all of Israel. He needed to understand he didn't just get to be, oh, I'm the king and all the things that I do is just myself. And everything I do, I'm only going to be the only one that suffers from it. God doesn't treat us that way.
You're making it worse, Lexus. We started this conversation by determining what does it mean? What is justice? Is it ever just for a man's wives to be raped for the sin of the man? You said no. You said there wasn't. Then I took you to the Bible, and now you're bending into literal fucking pretzels trying to justify why God did this horrific action. The reality of the matter is the Bible doesn't care about women. They're just one step above slaves. That's why God is okay having women raped for a crime they didn't fucking commit. Because the God of this Bible thinks that women are just one step above property, which is why he's obsessed with their virginity. He's obsessed with them being obedient to their husbands.
Oh, I have time to talk now. Okay, cool. So, like I was saying, David was the kind of person who would take any punishment that God would take him. In that particular scripture, I'm being honest, 100%.
Great.
If you read
you still haven't substantiated that David needed to have his wives raped. All you're saying is that God was incapable of actually punishing David adequately, which means you don't believe in an all-powerful God. If God's not capable of punishing David, a method that is adequately able to cause him to feel remorse, then your God is weak and not pedantic, and pathetic. Your God is weak and pathetic.
You know, the problem with that way of thinking, I would totally 100% agree with that way of thinking, but the problem with
It's not a way of thinking.
is
It's just
most
logic.
people-
It's logically true. It's just logically
Okay,
true.
so
If
the problem-
if your God is unable to punish David without having the wives raped, then your God's not all powerful.
So, like I was saying, when God makes that decision, we're under the impression that we know a better way to enact that because we're the kind of people that can justify or say this is how this should be
it's not
handled, this is how that
it's
should
not an argument about morality. It's a logical problem, right? If your God is incapable of punishing David in a method that results in remorse without having the wives raped, then it means that your God is incapable of doing something, which means he's not all powerful. It's just a logically true argument.
By that logic, anybody who doesn't do something when
No.
they could do something,
No,
are
wrong,
not capable
wrong
of
again,
doing that
Lexus.
something.
God's all
That's the
powerful.
logic that you're
No,
putting
it's
on.
not.
That's what you're
No,
putting on.
it's fucking
If
not.
anybody doesn't
we're
do
not.
something when they
Lexus, listen to the words out of my fucking mouth. God is all powerful. We're not. We can't do all kinds of shit. Your God can do anything, right? So if your God can do anything, if there's nothing he can't do, that means he's capable of punishing David in a way which gets the message across to him without having the women raped. That's what it means to be all powerful. Do you understand that this is an analytically true argument about God, not about humans?
that would be you're implying that punishing David in that fashion was just about David.
Who else needed to be punished? Do you think the wives needed to be
David was
punished?
the one at fault. The
Yes.
women who were publicly raped, that happened under God's command. It wasn't the withdrawal of God's presence and love. He instructed that it be done. He might as well raped them himself.
Pretty much.
So basically God is telling Absalom, go ahead, go rape those women. Go do that because I'm God and I'm telling you, Absalom, go rape those women.
He says, I'm causing it to happen. He says, I will raise up trouble against you from within your own house and I will take your wives. God caused it to happen. If God didn't cause it to happen, it wouldn't have happened.
You're 100% correct. But how does God cause it to happen except for constantly in pattern?
It does not matter how he caused it to happen. The only thing that matters,
The
is that it doesn't. The only thing that matters is that he caused it to happen. If I killed a man by stabbing him, it doesn't matter how I stabbed him. It matters that I stabbed him and killed him. How I did it isn't that important. The problem is that I did it in the first place. It doesn't matter how God had the wives raped. It matters that he had it happen in the first place.
So it doesn't matter when somebody does something. It doesn't matter what they did, or it only matters what people do. It doesn't matter how they did.
Does it matter that God said he's causing it to happen?
Yes, it does, because
okay.
that shows that.
So does God have responsibility?
Yes, he does.
Okay. What if it happened if God didn't cause it to happen?
No, it wouldn't. If God
that means God is responsible for the women being raped. Say it. Let the words come out of your lying lips. Say God is responsible for what happened to the women. Say it.
That's not true.
Say it.
It's not true.
It is true. God says, I'm raising up trouble against you. I will take your wives. You literally just said that God is responsible. What does it mean when someone says, I am doing something? Is that taking responsibility?
God takes 100% credit for being the one to remove himself and cause that to happen. Yes.
It didn't say anything about removing himself. You keep adding that bullshit into the passage. It's not in there. God says, I'm causing something to happen. I am raising up trouble against you. I am taking your wives. it wouldn't have happened unless God wanted it to happen, would it?
By that text, you're by only addressing the text. If you say, oh, the text is a text, can you tell me how God did it?
Yes, he caused Absalom to rebel against his own father and take the wives, and he influenced Ahithophel, apparently, to give that advice to Absalom, which is why he says, I will take your wives. God has the responsibility. You just said a minute ago, if God didn't cause it to happen, it wouldn't have happened. Are you lying? Are you saying that you take that back now?
No, how does he do it?
It doesn't fucking matter. Would it happen if God didn't cause it to happen?
Oh my gosh.
Lexus,
that is hilarious.
Say yes or no. Let it leave your lying lips. Would it have happened if God didn't cause it to happen?
Not at all.
Okay, so
But
if it wouldn't have happened unless God caused it to happen, then does that mean that God is responsible for the thing happening?
He's responsible for removing his presence. Yeah.
He's responsible for the acts that happened because he said, I'm causing these things to happen. He says, I will take your wives. He didn't say, I'm going to pull back and see what the fuck happens. He didn't say that. He said, I'm taking your wives. I'm causing it to happen. Stop lying on the book. Stop being a lying, dishonest, cowardly POS. Just say what the book says. The book says God said, I'm doing it. Yes or no?
God says, I caused it to happen. Yes.
Okay.
I caused
so
it to happen.
If you cause something to happen, are you responsible for the thing that you caused?
You're responsible for everything that you do.
Okay, so if you cause it to happen, you are responsible for it, which means God is responsible for the thing that he caused, namely the women being raped, isn't he?
Well,
you already admitted it. Just let the words
sin.
leave your lying lips. Say God is responsible for the thing that he caused to happen.
God's responsible for all of his actions, 100%.
Okay,
true.
and does his actions include causing the women to be raped?
How does he cause it?
He says he's causing it. The question is he responsible for the thing he says he's doing?
Yes, he's responsible for the thing that he
Thank
says he's
you.
doing.
Okay, and he says he's going to have the women taken, which means he's responsible. That's what that means. It's just logically true.
All the things that he causes to happen.
You've been up here an hour and 14 minutes making an utter fool out of yourself. He caused it to happen.
How does he cause it to happen?
He caused it to happen by influencing Absalom against David.
How does he influence Absalom? Does the Bible say
The
that?
Bible doesn't tell you how he did it. He just tells you that he caused it. It doesn't matter how you think it happened. The only thing that matters is God says, I am causing it. If there's a murder and you know who the murderer is, it does not matter how the murderer made it happen. What matters is that the murderer murdered the motherfucker. So even if you don't know how God turned all the knobs to make it happen, that's not important. What's important is God says, I'm having them raped. I'm causing it, which means he's responsible for it. And you're a lying, dishonest POS. I hope you're not married.
Even in that same scenario,
I can't handle this guy for 1 second longer. Not 1 fucking second longer.
I have rarely seen you that heated. I am exhausted.
Yeah, it's pretty exhausting, actually. I don't know why I put up with these people.
His extra biblical bullshit was depleting.
Yeah, it's crazy, like the amount of like the lies and the cognitive dissonance that you have to put yourself in to say slavery was never justified, and then go and justify fucking slavery, and then say it's never okay to have women raped for the crimes of their husbands, and then justify the raping of the women. It's crazy that you would do that, and then not think to yourself, oh, I'm being double tongued here, right? The fact that he got up here and thought that he was doing the Lord's work while lying through his mouth is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
And the irony of the last piece of content is that part of the Bible is one place where God actually owns having caused something.
Yeah.
And Luxus wanted to get him out of it with the presence being gone. It,
Right. As long as I add stuff to the text that's not there, I can find a way to wiggle around it. All right, guys, let me grab some super chats. We'll get our last guest. Zakul.
I'm gonna jump down. I have to go look for apartments tomorrow. So,
All right, Dr.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for joining me. Sorry you had to sit through that.
oh no, it was great to see you do your work.
All right, have a great guys. Make sure you're following Dr. Joe and make sure you're in our Discord community. Dr. Joe, have a great night. Get some rest. W for Dr. Joe. Zakul says, words don't mean words if I don't like them. You pretty much nailed it. That's the goal. The goal is to make sure the words never have meanings, right? And Rock Hard for Doug, thank you for the super chat, says, these tree lovers are claiming Jesus was a carpenter when in reality he was a tecton, more likely working with stone. It all ties back to Doug. Hell yeah, he was a tecton. You nailed it. In fact, a lot of stuff was made from stone back then. Hell, Jesus was laid in a manger, which was probably hewn stone. It was probably a stone manger. Jesus was rock hard from birth. It's right there in the story, guys. And Rock Hard for Doug gifting out 5 Deconstruction Zone memberships as well. Big W. I appreciate that. And shit, Carlos sending out 10 Deconstruction Zone memberships. Big W, Carlos. I really appreciate that. We're adding to the Kraken crew, guys. We're making it big. And Singer Soul, thank you for the $10 super chat, says, you should ask Alexis that when we defeated the WW2 World War II Germans, should we have taken prisoners of war, women and children as slaves, since some of them did bad things? Yeah, actually, that's a really good talking point that I've heard before I didn't think about, but that's a really good one. I do like that one. Yeah, if you think that it's okay to punish people with slavery, there's a lot of modern examples we can think of. And my guess is he wouldn't like it, but he would run away to, well, because Jesus came, he got rid of the consequences, whatever. Scott Duff, thank you for the 666 on Venmo. Scott says it's difficult to get a man to understand something when its salary depends on not understanding it. Upton Sinclair. Yeah, that's a good one. And you're 100% right too. Riding Soundwave says, I heard Doug is the basalt of the earth. Doug is the basalt of the earth. Amen. Absolutely, he is. Thank you for the super chat, and praise Doug, the rock of salvation. And here he is again. He says, I was traveling on the road to Damascus and had a vision where Christians were taking people as butlers owned for life. And Doug said that was wrong. Thus saith the Rock of Ages. Praise Doug. In fact, I'm still, perplexed about this situation with Doug and St. Paul, because my understanding is Paul fell off his horse and bumped his head on a Doug and he lost his mind. I don't know if that was a miscalculation or what, but boy, did he really lose his mind there. And Yehoshua, thank you for the super chat, says, I'm just not sure how people don't understand slavery in their book. It's weird to me, like when you're reading the book, it's so clear what it's saying. You have to be a dishonest POSFF to not see what it's actually saying. And I don't know if that conversation is actually going to get saved, because my stream on YouTube is not set up correctly, because I don't know, it's just not... it's not transmitting the packets correctly. It's really, it's lagging really bad. I don't know why. But anyways, we're gonna get one more guest in here, and then we're gonna do what we can. Zakulu says, "Oh brother, this guy stinks." Yeah, he really does. That guy was a POS. Acme Hero says your patient is saintly. Wait a minute. Yeah, not on that one. Listen, this after midnight, and when somebody comes up being that big of a POS, I don't know if I can hold back. The minute you're justified selling your daughter as a slave and having your wives raped, you've crossed the line for me. That is the line. And Spencer says, God's vineyard grows a shit vintage of grapes. Yeah, and probably shitty grapes too. And Grim, thank you for the 666. His slavery apologetics tonight was off the chart. Switching up to David's wives was genius. He went from pretzel to Mobius strip. Nicely played. Well, thank you so much, Grim. I appreciate that. I've never seen somebody be as dishonest as Lexus, though. That is a wild track. Most people, when they read the story of David's wives being raped, they're at least able to pause and be like, oh, that doesn't sound good. He couldn't. Adele, thank you for the super chat, says Lexus or Luxus, but it's a consequence. Let me explain. Yeah, what a POS. It's not a consequence. Punishments are not consequences. They're decisions made to punish. And Zukulu again says, have this guy say this David shit to an SA survivor. Actually, that's a good point. He would never be bold enough to do that. At least I hope not. He could be that horrible. And Kay, good to see you tonight. Appreciate the super chat. Kay says, love you, Justin. I think a lot of these people are clearly not listening to understand that they're listening to reply. I agree with you, Kay. That guy was not here to have a conversation. Every time I rebutted one of his talking points, he just waited for me to quit talking so that he can move on to the next talking point. He didn't actually want dialogue. And cake is a lie. I love me some cake. I hope it's not a lie, but I appreciate the super chat. Says, it's all very simple, folks. Graping is evil. Enslaving people is evil. Punishing people for crimes they didn't commit is evil. Look in the mirror and ask, why does your God command this shit? Exactly. If you're an honest person and you see this in the Bible, what you should be saying is, oh, that's not good. That's the honest answer. And Kay, again, thank you for the super chat. It says, people who are unintentionally or intentionally dense are the most frustrating people. Anyone who justifies grape and slavery should take a good look at themselves. I'm with you. And I think, I could be wrong, I think he was intentionally dense. I don't think he was unintentionally dense. I think he was being purposely dense, which is why I got so frustrated with him, because he knew he was being a piece of shit and he was being dense on purpose. And Jam and Jay says this whole Maslow pyramid is infected. No hope for him. You're right. His whole Maslow period, his hierarchy of needs is very problematic. Very problematic. And that God fucks, dope name, beautiful dog. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Says, here's the kicker, Lexus. If God is all knowing, he didn't just cause it to happen. He fucking planned it before he created those 10 women or David. That's such a good point. He didn't just cause it. He set those wheels into motion at the beginning of the universe. Literally did that. And K again, big WK, I appreciate the super chats. He says, it's disgusting that this guy laughed when you were saying how his God hated women and treated women like slaves. An omnipresent God can't remove his presence. But I know his next argument would have been, well, not his actual presence, just the fullness of his presence. And then we'd have a pointless conversation on what it means to be fully present or partially present. But Flanker, thank you for the super chat, says, quoting a rebellion slaver and showing it lines up with guest views is effective rhetoric. I agree, actually. Like, if you read the writings of the people that did the enslavement, they used the Bible. The Southern Baptist Convention, they split. The Southern Baptist Convention formed specifically to enshrine Christian slavery. They meant it. They wanted to keep that shit. And last one from St. Barnabas, he says, I just drove past a Lexus dealership and almost threw up in my mouth. Yeah, I could see that. I would throw up in my mouth too, actually, after that. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Let's grab our guest here. We'll get our guest joined up. All right, it looks like we've got V with us. How you doing, V?
Oh my God, am I finally on? I'm finally on. Shit. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
You're on. It's a little choppy. Your connection is a little bit choppy.
Yeah, I moved to Colombia, buddy.
Do you have
I got out of
Wi-Fi?
the United States, so no, I'm on a cell phone connection. So apologies.
Well, that's why it's so choppy.
I
so
can
it's
come back.
well,
I mean, back if I need to tomorrow or another day,
well, you've got 3 red bars right now, and we can't make out much of what you're saying.
5 bars at LTE here, buddy. So I don't know what to tell you. Can we refresh?
3,
Let me try to refresh.
Yeah, refresh it. See if that works.
All right, let me try that. Hold on.
This should be fun. Interesting. We've got 2 people in the guest box. We got V, although he just dropped for a second, and Nameless V. What's happening there? All right, 1 second. All right, see if that works.
How's that coming through? Are we coming through a little better now?
No, unfortunately, it's choppy, and when the connection's really bad like this, it sounds like there's a bullfrog in the connection. Also, I
Well,
hate
listen,
I hate to
I'm
say it,
I'm
but
gonna finish.
you can't
Yeah,
smoke on here either. You'll get the live taken down.
smoking a cigarette?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because we're streaming to
You,
multiple platforms and on the TikTok platform.
wait. You can call people a piece of shit,
Yep.
but I can't have a cigarette.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
Hey, I didn't make the
Yeah.
rules. I just follow them. I didn't.
Okay. Well, look,
I didn't.
I'll smoke
I didn't.
cigarette off of the live here.
I didn't
Hold
design
on,
the
man. Here we go.
application.
Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Listen,
That's the important.
you can smoke all you want. You just can't do it on camera.
That's the idea. Yeah, I'm gonna smoke off camera here.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can turn your video off too. It might fix your vocals.
Oh my God, I didn't think about that. Let me do that. Hang on. How do I? Yeah, there we go. How's that? Is that better?
We'll see. Let's give it a shot.
So I turned the video off. Is that better now? Can you
Yeah.
hear me a little bit better?
I don't know if it is much better.
Well, let's do what we can. How about that? Let's give it a shot.
Fair enough.
That's what we're all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So, yeah, let's go for it, man. I've been waiting for 3.5 hours to get on here and talk to you.
Oh, shit, that's a long time.
You know, yeah, no shit.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I've been waiting a long time.
which God do you believe in?
Oh, I don't, man. But I still have issues with some of the shit you had to say. Like, you know, just because I'm an atheist doesn't mean that I don't have any issues with things that atheists have to say. Like,
Oh, so you just came to complain?
no, I came to have a conversation. Why is that a complaint?
Well, go ahead.
I thought I thought this was a place to have a conversation with people who are believers, non-believers, so on and so forth. So
It's a debate
that was my
space.
understanding. Right? Yeah. So that's what I'm here to do.
So what are we going to debate about
you
if
call it
we're
complaining
both
then.
atheists?
Well, I don't know. You call people pieces of shit to their face.
Well, I'm sorry.
On my end,
Do you think that people that endorse slavery and rape are pieces of shit?
well, I didn't hear anything they had to say because
That's a yes or no
right?
question. Yes or no? Do you think that people that endorse rape and slavery are pieces of shit?
Well, it depends on the circumstances in which they defend those things.
There are no circumstances in which defending rape and slavery is ever a good thing, is there?
I don't know. I couldn't hear anything. That
What do you mean you don't know? There's no scenario in which there's ever a good reason to enslave a person and have their wives raped, is there?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But,
Well, that's what the guest disagreed with. That last guest was making excuses for why it's okay to have women raped and it's okay to own slaves. That's why he was a piece of shit.
Right, but why were they making that argument?
Because they're a piece of shit too.
Well, that doesn't solve the question.
They're making the argument because the book shows God doing it, and they think that if their God does it, they have to go to bat and explain why their God did it. But there's no way to justify women being raped for their husband's crimes, is there?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so if there's no way to ever justify a woman being raped for the crimes of her husband, then there's no way you should ever be justified in defending it when you read it in the Bible. Just like you wouldn't defend the Prophet Muhammad touching a 6-year-old girl and he married her and consummated the marriage at age 9. You wouldn't defend that ever, would you?
No, I mean, I wouldn't condone Kevin Spacey being violent and raping men that are on the set with him either.
You got it. Now, if somebody was defending that, if somebody was saying, listen, I do think that it was okay for Kevin Spacey to do those things, would that person be a POS?
Well, I don't know. I
Yes.
have no
Yes.
idea what
The answer is yes. Anytime you endorse wicked behavior, you're a POS. If you endorse raping women, you're a POS. You endorse kidnapping people, you're a POS. These are all things that make you a POS. The fact that you can't admit this is wild to me. Maybe you're a piece of shit yourself.
I did tell you that I wouldn't defend that myself.
Okay.
Right.
But do you agree that people who do defend women being raped for crimes they didn't commit and defend people being allowed to own slavery. Slavery was okay. Are those people POSs?
Well, to a degree, yeah. But
Oh, there you go.
I
To
think
agree
that
that I'm
there's
right. Thank you for finally just admitting the obvious. Yeah, people who are okay
no. I didn't say you
are
were right.
defending slavery, and people that
I
are
didn't say you.
defending rape are pieces of shit. That's
I
just
mean, you could talk over me, or we could have a conversation. But I didn't say you were right.
okay. Well, we're not gonna have a conversation because I'm done with you. Sounds like you're a piece of shit yourself, actually. All right, guys, it's shit. Speaking of piece of shit, almost 2 a.m. I've got to get to bed. I've got a bunch of stuff I got to get done today. I'm starting to get tired after those last 2 POS FFs. I'm sure my account's going to get taken down by morning, but it's okay. If my TikTok account goes down tonight while I'm sleeping, which is a pretty high chance that it will once it gets reviewed by the AI police, I'll just live stream from YouTube only on the next stream. Now that we've got just about everybody on TikTok following my YouTube account. So if you don't see me live Sunday night, it's because my TikTok got taken down and got banned. Because you're not really supposed to say that kind of stuff. But anyways, guys, Mob, I'm going to be on Sunday night for questions if you want to do a deep dive on Daniel 9 prophecy. I love Daniel 9 prophecy. Come find me after the Atheist Experience Sunday night. We'll talk about it. But let me grab the last 2 super chats. Adele, thank you so much. It says also wanted to know user Rock Hard for Doug and I are no way. Okay, so Adele and Rock Hard for Doug are married, and we project your lives on TV and then watch also on our phone so we can super chat. Lifelong fans. But thank you so much, Adele. I really appreciate that. Those callers like the last guy really make my blood boil. And I know they make some of your guys' blood boil. But maybe, I don't know. Maybe he learned a lesson. Maybe he didn't. But sometimes you got to get a little bent out of shape, before you can make a horseshoe. But thank you, Max, for gifting a Deconstruction Zone membership. I appreciate that. All right, guys, listen. I've got to get to bed. Thank you so much for spending your night with me, despite the power outages and the freezing on the various live streams, and for those last POS FFs. Thank you so much for being here. Is anyone live right now that we can go raid? Is anyone still up? Let me see. Someone's got to still be up. I bet Cyber's up.
It's like
Is Joel up?
Vaccination schedule back in the night.
Let me see who's all live here. Let's see. I hate the TikTok website. It's so bad. It's so bad.
My mom told me.
All right. Now we can see who's online. Oh shit, Mezzo's online. Oh, just Mezzo. That's all I see. All right, guys, we're gonna go raid Mezzo. Let's go raid Mezzo. Let's give him a big hearty welcome from Doug. Here he is. It's Mezzo_WS. Mezzo_WS. He's already got 640 people in the room. Let's bump that thing up over 700. I'll see you over there in just a minute. I don't think he's dual streaming to YouTube tonight. I could be wrong. But let's go give our buddy Mezzo a raid, and I'll see you over there in just a minute, guys. Thank you so much for all the likes, shares, gifts, super chats, and supports. I really appreciate it. Thank you.